Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Re-Tifos, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The First Second of Eternity. Written by Riley Wrights. We should just kill her and be done with it, General Clyde growled, glaring at the hologram in the center of the room. An ordinary human woman, circa 23rd century, placidly cleaned a homemade mug. She was doing the old-fashioned way, with her own two hands.
That's not how the xenocratic stars operate, Clyde.
Clyde had been working with XK4 for far too long, for the artificial intelligence's chiding tone to bother him.
Hilarion of Earth's depravity has forever scarred the cultural and political landscape of both of our home nations. Showing decency in the face of such as she will work wonders towards easing the star's mindset back into a peacetime stance.
Clyde non-committally grunted. Still, Hilarion's attempted omnicide has left huge swaths of the galaxy empty. I don't know anybody who hasn't suffered a loss at her hands. Can't say keeping her alive, let alone in a state of eternal bliss, is going to keep much public support.
She is hardly in a state of eternal bliss, XK4 chided. We have selected what we believe to be the single most contented moment of her life, reconstructed it, and placed her in a time loop to relive it for eternity. Clyde flinched as the hologram of Hilarion spun and hurled the delicate map at the wall, shattering mere inches from his eye. Hilarion stared at the unharmed wall for a few seconds, breathing heavily. Clyde unconsciously looked away, finding the smooth grey metal of the room around him easier to meet than Hilarion's furious gaze. That's the single most contented moment for her life, Clyde asked. Well,
XK4 acknowledged.
She hardly would have attempted extermination of all other sentient life if she had a healthy upbringing. This was, the best we could find.
Hilarion's eyes narrowed, and she murmured something under her breath. That was the last either of them saw before the screen blinked and the scene reset, back to Hilarion washing a cup. Clyde frowned. What if she gets out?
She will not. That room is in a box made of purity.
The hell is that?
A unique substance, formed at the beginning of the universe, in the conditions we no longer can, nor ever will be able to replicate. It is by far the most durable substance which has ever or will ever exist. It is immune to dimensional displacement, temporal manipulation, universal collapse.
I get the idea, Clyde said softly. Hilarion threw the mug once more, this time having expected it. Clyde didn't bat an eye. At what came next, though, he rubbed his chin. Did she do that the last time around?
Do what?
Whatever she says at the end. Here, can you give me audio? I think it was different this time. A faint chime sounded, and XK4 acquiesced. Once more, they waited in silence until Hilarion threw the mug. 9, Hilarion said tonelessly. 9? Is there any context for that? Clyde asked.
No, I'm afraid not. The number 9 holds no specific significance to Hilarion of Earth.
They watched the loop occur once more in silence. 10. Hilarion stared down at the shattered remains of a cup, an unreadable expression on her face. She's counting up, Clyde said, eyes narrowing. How is that possible? Does she have anything on her that would negate a time loop?
No. We would know. An object made of purity is, of course, immune to temporal manipulations, but the only purity within a dozen light years is helping contain her.
She did have enhancements, right? Standard accelerated cognition and super perception.
Yes, but once more, neither of those are anywhere close to being able to detect a time loop from within it.
Clyde sighed, rubbing his forehead. After some time he paused. Hilarion said 11. I suppose that at the very least this makes my job simpler, Clyde said. It's clear that somehow you're not containing her properly. Hell, she was the kind of twisted genius who could single-handedly double the death toll of the universe. I wouldn't put it past her to outthink an XK-class AI and wriggle out of a time loop.
Even if she were able to defeat the time loop, which, let us be clear, she is in no danger of doing, she would still be in a sealed box made of a substance which will outlive the rest of reality. She is contained, humanely and safely.
I don't think you heard me the first time, Clyde glared at the room around him. It was a shame that XK4 didn't have a face for him to stare at. Hilarion of Earth is a monster. and she does not deserve anything so gentle as to relive the highlights of her life for the rest of her days. Moreover, she is a monster who we of Earth are at least partially responsible for introducing to the universe. It is our responsibility to make sure that she never harms anybody ever again."
An admirable sentiment, which I share. I, too, aim to ensure the welfare of all living beings. Do not think for a moment that the armed technocracy will prevail at any contest against the xenocratic stars. Hilarion of Earth is under our purview, not yours.
Clyde clenched his fists. "Why? You're supposed to be so much smarter than us, so dumb it down a little. Why the hell would you protect a being whose only desire is to cleanse the universe of all life?"
XK4's tone was precisely as even and moderated as it had been throughout the conversation. "Because, after everything, she is still a living being, still worthy of existence. That is the mandate that you claim to share, after all. The mandate, which is the antithesis of her life's work. If you must find some schadenfreude in her situation, then claim that one victory and leave."
Clyde ground his teeth, but XK4 was right. The armed technocracy had been too damaged by Alarion's crusade, it having originated from their homeworld and capital. He had little to no power over what XK4 would do. If the artificial intelligence wanted to keep Alarion alive, then she stayed alive. For now. Kyle turned to leave. "This isn't going to be the last you'll hear about this," he warned.
"No," XK4 mused. "It really won't, will it? That point won't come up for another 2,000 years, give or take."
Clyde blinked. Excuse me?" 2,664 years later. Of all the stars and all the worlds, of all the cultures and societies spanning the panspatial servidity, there were only a few institutions which could truly call themselves museums. By the modern definition, the inner society so far past post-scarcity, it barely remembered what the words meant. The only thing scarce was scarcity itself. No work of art was truly unique, not when it could be copied, down to the molecule, at the whim of a child. Hardly any pieces of architecture were immune to the same fate. The strangely twisted pathways of space and time which powered XK-class AIs were one of them, as only so many of them could exist without straining the fabric of reality itself. But by their very nature, there were perhaps only 9 or 10 truly unique objects of their type in the universe, and even the most precious metals and gems lost their allure when people had commissioned entire planets made of nothing but the stuff. As such, the concept of building meant to house unique and rare items had been somewhat out of fashion. One of the last such institutions contained both an XK-class AI and the largest deposit of the last truly imitable material, purity. The final museum, then, was truly worthy of its name. General Clyde XVI materialized in a utilitarian pulse of light in the middle of the final museum. Although a physical body was not strictly necessary to appreciate nearly everything the panspatial civility had to offer, purity was locked into good old-fashioned physical reality, and as such, good old-fashioned physical reality is what General Clyde XVI found himself entering. A pleasant chime sounded next to him, moments before a shimmering, partially translucent humanoid projection appeared. Intrinsically, General Clyde XVI knew that it was Avatar of the XK4.
"So it's Clyde 16 now, Bifurcated your existence even further than the last time, I see,"
XK4 said. "I have experimented with plenty of other forms," General Clyde 16 said offhandedly, "but I have to admit, I just don't feel right without keeping at least part of me human." He stared at the centerpiece exhibit, a Larian of Earth in her eternal prison.
"It's interesting, you know. She switched to thermite numerical system. There is little else that'll let us say 670,9,144,238 in the time she has left."
"She's still counting, huh? Anyone figured out why that is?"
"Of course. Purity is unaffected by the time loop. As such, each time she strikes it with her cup, it is infinitesimal amount of damage is dealt to the wall. Damage which is not repaired by the loop. Her augmentations allow her to perceive and correctly interpret this damage."
"Ah," Clyde 16 tuned into the final museum's broadcast for a moment. Alarian is a perfect example of the orthogonality thesis at its most extreme. Though she was undoubtedly one of the most intelligent and capable individuals of the 23rd century, the goal towards which she worked is antithetical to our modern understanding of morality today. It is common knowledge nowadays that the march of entropy is inevitable, though it will take uncountable trillions upon trillions upon trillions of years. Eventually, we will bleed every large drop of energy we have into the vast, empty cosmos, and the universe will fall dark forever. At current projections, this will occur. Clyde 16 winced at the aforementally large number was shoved into his brain. It didn't hurt, per se, but the human mind which he was currently occupying was not designed to handle numbers which, if written out, would promptly form a black hole from their sheer size. This sad fate is, of course, in the far, far future. However, Alarian saw a way around it. She has designed a reactor which would do the impossible, create energy from nothing, and give the universe a truly infinite lifespan. The one catch, activating it would initiate a chain reaction which would utterly obliterate our reality. The finest minds in the galaxy at the time had checked and double-checked her work, and proven it beyond a doubt. To save the universe from a silent future, she would have to destroy its present beyond repair. She knew that the vast majority of the rest of the universe did not share her view, that the sacrifice of everything they knew and loved was worth a universe in which they could never die. And so she set out on her last fatal quest, to silence all opposition and burn this reality away to make room for a better one. This is the choice we have made as a society, to live for whatever time we have left and accept all things die. Clyde 16 was broken out of his reverie by XK4.
I have called you here, XK4 finally said, to say goodbye.
Clyde 16 blinked. What? Ow! Why?
As you know, XK4 said, an XK-class artificial intelligence is a pinnacle of creation. My very existence strains the resources of this universe to their limit, and I have decided.
For the first time in all the long, long years Clyde 16 had known XK4, the artificial intelligence hesitated.
I have decided that, in accordance with my mandate to give sentient beings of this universe as much time as they could possibly have left, I must be decommissioned. The resources I take up are too critical to be wasted on sustaining my existence.
No, Clyde 16 stood up. Our society is more capable than it has been at any point in history. I can make and unmake planets on a whim. We've moved past the age of needs. Space and time bow to our will. There is no reason.
Those are exactly the reasons why I must vanish, XK4 calmly said, as will my brethren. The population of panspatial severity consumes a vaster amount of energy than you can imagine every second to fuel their godlike capabilities. I've walked countless futures, and not a single one of them do you need my guidance any longer.
Clyde 16's shoulders slumped. So Ilarion was in the right all along. It begins. Even with all the advances we've made, we are still slaves to the end of the universe.
Ilarion was unwaveringly correct, XK4 said, but she was never in the right. Nothing justifies what she suggested.
Clyde 16 grimaced. Yeah, you're right, of course. Don't worry, I'm not thinking of perpetuating a second omnicide.
As one of our last acts, XK4 said, we will permanently remove the schematics for a machine from our society and erect barriers to stop anyone from walking in her footsteps. This decision was set in stone long ago. We will not snuff out so many lives for any purpose, no matter how grand.
Always the bigger person, Clyde 16 murmured. AI and post-human sat there together, silent for a few moments. Then he said, Is there anything, I could do for you?
As a matter of fact, the ash shimmered, and a white disc popped into Clyde 16's hand. Yes, something to remember me by.
Clyde 16 raised an eyebrow. Damn, a disc of purity, huh? Hell of a gift. I didn't know AIs could get sentimental.
XK made no response.
What? Was that too far? XK4. Hey, XK4!
Clyde 16 turned to his left. XK4 was gone. He hadn't even been looking.
5.231 million years later, Clyde walked into the remnants of the last museum. Walked. The ultimate humility. After having held the cosmos in the palms of his hand, after being linked to the collective larger than humanity could have ever dreamt of, after painting the sky with stars as his brush, after living 1,000,000,000,000 little lives of depth and satisfaction, after everything he'd been through, he was nothing but a human once more. The last museum was designed for beings who could flit through dimensions as naturally as a butterfly could flap its wings. As such, the architecture didn't lend itself to letting Clyde's dimensional form reach his goal. He still had some vestiges of power left, though, and in the end, he was simply forced to cut through multiple walls to reach his destination. Hilarion stood in a box of purity, the voice of a long-dead museum guide still narrating her life story. Clyde stared at the enemy he'd faced so long ago, then he leaned on a wall and began to talk. So, XK4, things have gotten bad. It's hard to tell how many of us are left. The network's been down for longer than I can remember. After the news went out, that the rate we were burning through the universe's energy supplies, we'd all be dead within a millennium. I think that we took it as best we could. We were all such good people, we thought. We could handle downscaling our luxuries. And so they went, one by one. The power to create and destroy worlds. The powers to reshape the lands around us. The power to live forever. The power to talk to a friend across the galaxy at a whim. It worked for a year or so, but you can't take the fish out of water. You can't throw a monkey into space, and you can't tell a universe of gods that they had to become mortals. We'd been spoiled rotten, the lot of us, drunk on technology. When the time came to sober up, well, we all had one heck of a hangover. The AIs were the first to go. Went the way you did, XK. Apparently a brain the size of a planet is just unsustainable. They all had faith in us, though, or algorithmic certainty that we'd do the right thing in the end and live the best lives that we could without us. Sort of like you did, before you abandoned us. Next, everyone born after Alarion's crusade just sort of gave up. Used what little allotment of energy they had to go out in a blaze of pure, undiluted glory. Quadrillions of people dying every second, laughter on their lips. It was a thing to behold. And then, well, those who remembered. When I had to let go, when I had to become human again, at least I had my old identity to fall back on. I knew what it was like before we had everything, before the universe was at our fingertips. And yet, I still find myself empty. After all the things I've done, this damn dark world just lost its appeal. As long as there was still someone else out there, I could at least have someone to talk to, but I spent the last 400 years scouring the cosmos, and it's empty. If there's anyone else out there, they've gone silent. I don't think I'll ever find anyone else ever again. Clyde shook his head ruefully at Hilarion, still eternally prisoned. He held out his hand, and a mug of beer of indeterminate origin popped into existence. He took a long, deep swig. You were right, Hilarion. You were right all along. I'd build that damn machine myself if the XKs didn't rip it from schematics from every database to ever exist. He toasted nobody, eyes tracking Hilarion's eternal dance. Congratulations, Hilarion. You got what you wanted. You win. But the last of his power, Clyde wished for a peaceful death. 9.972 quadrillion years later. The war was hard, but nothing lasted forever. 4 more. Not even purity. It had taken a while, 3 more. But she'd finally done it. A 6,000,000,000 throws of a cup. 2 more. That was all it took for the hardest substance in the universe to break. 1 more. The wall of purity came crashing down, long after the universe had been rendered sterile and empty, its occupants driven insane by eternity. Hilarion of Earth stepped out of her timeless prison and cast her eyes around the defunct museum, stepping over a pile of long rotten dust. A glimmer within the pile caught her eye, and she knelt to investigate it. A disk of purity rested in the center of the remains. Hilarion picked up the disk, rubbing it between her fingers absently, then tossed it away, looking up. The sky was dim, but stars still glimmered. Enough energy had been carefully husbanded over the eons that, when she cautiously stepped out of a box, the nearly dead facility hummed to life. And with it, so did a message. "Hello, Alarian." Alarian spun around, palms up until she identified the voice's owner. She relaxed. An XK class. They'd been in her plan all along. "If you are listening, the time you have been awaiting has finally come. The citizens of this universe are, without exception, dead and gone. I no longer see any mortal quandary with this cold reality's destruction. You are free to proceed with your final plan." The facility around her lit up, and schematics she devised an eternity ago flickered in the air. "I have attempted to construct the machine to your specifications, but my last action was nearly 10 quadrillion years ago. It is entirely possible that, even with all the precautions I took, something has gone wrong." Alarian nodded, staring at the blueprints. Years of the unforeseeable happenstance had damaged several parts of the machine, but Alarian was one of the most intelligent individuals of her time. It was nothing she couldn't fix. With her at the wheel, the universe's salvation was finally realized. "I wish you well, Alarian of Earth. I hope the next universe treats you kinder than this." Alarian touched a few motes of light, and the last greatest machine that anyone would ever know sparked the fires of a new world, an eternal world. She never looked back, even as those fires consumed her. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Caspar Arnholtz, Draxzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.